Go ahead, Wendy.
Okay, well, welcome everyone to the second to last meeting of the Hunting and Advanced Technology Working Group. We have an aggressive agenda tonight, so we're going to move as quickly as we can. The primary things to notice on the agenda is that we are going to attempt consensus on the principles that you have used to inform the development of your recommendations. So we have one less thing to do next time. And then we're going to continue to work on draft recommendations. It would be my aspiration that all draft recommendations will have been mentioned by tonight, so that we're not asking people to consider stuff they've never even seen before at our final meeting. So we'll go as fast and as hard as we can on the things that I'm aware that you want to talk about. As per usual, please pay attention to what we're talking about on the agenda and keep your comments germane to that topic. Recognize and appreciate that there's diversity of perspectives amongst your members, and that's one of the strengths you have as a working group. And make sure that we maintain a respectful space as we proceed. So with that, it is introductions. So just sort of a one-worder, how you feeling about what we've done so far? And we're going to go in alphabetical order by last name. So we're going to hit Derek first.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. I guess one word, confident. I think we're doing a great job.
Oh, nice to hear. Matt Borg.
Yeah, I like confident, optimistic.
Okay. Good. Jason Carr.
I think I would echo what Matt said with optimistic.
Okay, thank you. Jeff Chowles, whose name I will perpetually mispronounce.
Pleasure to be here tonight. I think we're making good progress and very optimistic that we can accomplish our goal.
Yay, thank you. Ken Crane.
Yeah, I agree too. I'm confident we'll have some good product.
Tim Frost.
We're going with one word, bold.
Yay. Nathan Guy.
If we're going one word, engaged.
Nice. Dylan Halverson.
Optimistic.
Okay, thank you. Larry Hatter. You're muted. Bottom left-hand corner. We'll come back to you. Oh, there you are.
I'm sorry, my phone went crazy. No, just excited, looking forward to finishing up here.
Okay. Hallie?
Hey, everybody. I'll say hopeful.
Nice. Kim?
Cautiously optimistic.
Okay, thank you. Do we have Jeremiah? Not yet. Okay.
No, he's here.
Oh, he is. Okay, Jeremiah?
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to the outcome. I'm ready for it to come to the end.
You're ready to be done, huh? Okay, Alex.
I'm pretty encouraged to see the progress we're making.
Good. And Chelsea is not here. Bryce.
Yeah, I'm optimistic things will come together nicely.
Kevin is not with us yet, right? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Tal?
I'm hopeful.
Okay. Jeff Shin?
Hey, good evening. I'm going to echo the cautiously optimistic.
Okay. Nicole?
I'm going to stick with the theme of the night and say optimistic.
Okay. Doug Talbot?
Encouraged.
Rob Thornberry.
Hopeful.
Hopeful. Jason Top.
Hopeful.
Okay. And Dustin Webster.
I was looking for my thesaurus, but like everybody else, I'm hopeful, I'm excited, but it's a cautious excitement. It'll be interesting to see what we can cram in together for tonight. I think we can get good things done.
Yay. Well, I didn't hear anything to worry about. Did anybody else? Feels good. I hope we're lucky. So with that, we're going to go to Ellery for the report on the public feedback.
Perfect. Thanks, Wendy. I will keep it very brief since we are tight on time. Essentially, since the last time we met, we received a little over 10 additional comments from the public. The breakdown was provided in the summary in that graph. Just for a reminder, yep, right there. Just for the reminder of the folks, the reason why we keep showing this graph is because it gets updated every time we do this. Every time we have a meeting with the comments that have come in, so it's changing a little bit every meeting. Again, this is not the survey results. The survey results were provided to each of you both in printed version and written form and are on the website for members of the public. So this is a self-selected group of folks who have chosen to participate in this public feedback form. And the survey is a random statistical sample or a random sample that is statistically relevant to the whole of Idaho's big game hunting community. So just to make the distinction there.
If you want to revisit, they were presented in the January 4th meeting.
Yep. And they're also, the full report is also on the HAT working group webpage on the Fishing Game website if you want to compare and contrast the two. But that's why we keep circling back to this one, because every time we get new comments and we come back together, this specific graph gets updated with what that kind of summary looks like. So 247 comments total as of February 25th at 11 a.m. We have received a couple additional since then. And those will be included in the next summation and the final summation before our last meeting. So any questions from the group? All right.
Okay. Oh, good.
I had one.
Yes.
So I guess on the graph, and not to be devil's advocate already, but we've lumped together location sharing and live feed on the graph. I kind of consider those separate. As far as location sharing, I'm never good with for selling information on a hunt, but live feeds, as far as when we look at the public survey, it looks a little different there. So that's my one concern with it. And so I didn't know if there's a breakdown on that, Ellery, or anything on that.
Yeah, so this is just how we lump them together in how we review the comments, because they're similar. And if we kind of broke out every single thing individually, we'd have like an infinite number of buckets. So those are two things kind of lumped together. But just because someone said that they were okay with live feeds, but not okay with location sharing, there is some deviation in there. So I would suggest kind of taking that with a grain of salt, or reviewing the verbatim comments that that were provided to you all, so you can kind of see that distinction, and then comparing this public feedback summary to the statewide survey and kind of seeing where that deviation could be.
Sure, thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions for Ellery? Okay. Well, then, to tackle the work of the evening, we're going to take a look at the draft principles. You've identified 6 principles, with one being new at the last meeting, and that was the impact on fairness to all hunters. So I wanted to go over the wording as polished at the last meeting. So fair chase ethic, it says fair chase is the ethical, sportsmanlike, and legal pursuit and harvesting of any free-ranging wild game animal in a manner that does not give the hunter an improper or unfair advantage over the animal. As with any guideline, it is still rooted in personal ethics. For hunting opportunity and or / Idaho hunting heritage, you asked yourselves to consider, will this recommendation maintain our hunting opportunity and preserve our heritage and traditions into the future? Then for perception of the recommendations are reasonable, you asked 4 questions of yourselves. One is the recommendation supported by the best available science? The second is the recommendation enforceable? Number 3 is, does the recommendation align with public input? And then 4, does the recommendation place an undue burden on the hunting public? So the remaining 3 are ongoing need to address technology. And for this one, you developed a recommendation that Idaho Fish and Game consider 2 questions to support the evaluation of any new technologies that come forward after you are through meeting. One is, does the technology significantly override or disrupt an animal's ability to rely on its natural instincts, defenses, and survival strategies? And then second, does the technology lead to unsustainable harvest rates that jeopardize the health or viability of big game populations or Idaho Fish and Game's species management goals? And you further said that if there's a yes in response to either one of those questions, that should indicate a need for thoughtful evidence-based research and or review of the potential objective impacts of the technology on big game animals. Number 5 is the perception that the working group represents all Idaho hunters. And in this case, you asked 2 questions to ask of yourselves. Does each recommendation accurately reflect the data from the statewide survey, public comments, and our collective knowledge and experience? And then number 2, have we worked to develop unbiased opinions and reach a well-informed consensus guided by the input from hunters across Idaho with the goal of maximizing opportunities throughout the state? Then the final one, which was drafted at the last meeting, says recommendations should bring as many hunters to the same playing field as possible instead of giving a few an advantage over the rest. So I asked on the homework assignment for feedback on the fairness principle. I will not read all of these bullets, but this is what you said in response. So I want to give you a minute to review those responses. A minute feels very long on Zoom. So my question for you all is, I think there's one potential combination that resides in these comments about combining reasonable and fair. But absent that, I guess there's also the suggestion about potentially adding some kind of access for handicapped and elderly hunters. But do you want to work at all on the fairness principle? Does anyone feel the need to make changes to it?
Hey, Wendy, this is Ken.
Yes, Ken.
Something happened to my camera there, but I thought the suggestion that we look at possibly combining reasonable and fair, just to kind of simplify what we're looking for, and consolidate some of the considerations we're looking for as a group.
I think I could have made things easier for myself if I'd put them both on the same slide. But if we want to look, here's the reasonable one. And then the fairness one is here.
Wendy Hallie has her hand up.
Oh, Hallie, go ahead. Thank you for letting me know.
I agree with Ken that we could combine that with the previous principle.
So let's take a look at reasonable. What would, whoops. Oh, I'm in presentation mode. Would somebody propose what we would add to the reasonable one then?
I mean, I think it's kind of implied in that principle already with the placing an undue burden on the hunting public. That's just my 2 cents, but.
What do you think, Ken?
Well, I believe that's the case as well. I think if we inserted fairness into the reasonable recommendation or principle, we might capture that.
What if we replace the word reasonable with equitable? Would that help get us a little further along here?
I saw Alex shaking his head. Do you want to say something, Alex?
I was just going to say that instead of changing the word reasonable, just add where it says, does the recommendation place an undue burden on the hunting public or give advantage to one over another? Something along those lines. Or give unfair advantage, something along those lines.
I also agree that could be added onto the reasonable one like that.
So, or give unfair advantage to one group over another. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And Wendy, to Doug's point about equitable, in the title, you could just say perception that recommendations are reasonable and equitable. That kind of captures it. And then it goes into your 4 questions.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like you turned your microphone on.
Yeah, this is not relevant to this, but I would just say I would avoid the term equitable. If anything is going back to the legislature, they are not big fans of the word equity, so just be thoughtful there.
Fair
I think
point.
that's a wise statement. I agree with that as well.
I also agree. I as well. We should avoid that.
Okay. Well, it feels like the room, I know I'm not in the same room as you are, but are agreeable to the idea of deleting the fairness principle and adding 1/5 question to the reasonable principle so that it says, or no, I guess it's just elaborating on the 4th one. Does the recommendation place an unfair burden on the hunting public or give unfair advantage to one group over another? Rob?
Yeah, I would just add are reasonable and fair in the headline and then add the phrase to number 4 that you just described, Wendy.
Okay.
And I think that would cover it.
I can go along with that.
Hey, this is a speak now or forever hold your peace opportunity. Okay, I'm going to do a roll call. I'm calling.
Wendy,
Oh,
Hallie
yeah.
raised her hand.
Yes, Hallie.
I'm just wondering if those of you that are more familiar with the legislature, is fair a bad word as well?
Fair is great. Fair is DEI is the flashpoint. Fairness is not. I guess that's the simple answer.
I could probably go with either or. I've always said that fair is a fairy tale, so I've never been a fan of fairness.
That reminds me of that one comment on fairness that said Nothing's ever fair. I don't know who said that, but
I'm just wondering if we can leave out the word fair and change number 4 to, does the recommendation place an undue burden on any one group of the hunting public? Or any specific group of the hunting public or something like that.
Or provide advantage to another. I think that needs to be in there. as well.
Or provide advantage to another. Just leave out the word fair. I don't think we can make things fair. Somebody's going to be a better hunter than someone else all the time.
Well,
So, or
fairness is
provide-
subjective too.
I'm sorry?
I just said fairness is subjective. It was fair to me, might not be fair to the next person. It is a judgment call.
So the addition was or provide unfair advantage to one group over another. Do we take the word unfair out? Okay. Nathan,
Yeah, I was just gonna read what Hallie said. But yeah, take the word fair out, because I mean, you get somebody that's worked their butt off and they can buy a little bit better equipment, good for them, you know?
okay. So I'm going to read it again. That particular one. Perception that recommendations are reasonable. 4 questions to ask ourselves. Is the recommendation supported by the best available science? Is the recommendation enforceable? Does the recommendation align with public input? And 4, does the recommendation place an undue burden on the hunting public or give advantage to one group over another? Okay.
That'll work.
All right. I'm going to do a roll call.
Wendy, can I ask a question?
Yes.
This is kind of the preceding point number 1. It's more for Fish and Game than it is anybody. I think some other states have started to weaponize the use of like the term science. And so it's more of a question, is best available science the preferred terminology here of what we're trying to accomplish? Or is there a different approach that we would go with? What I don't want is I don't want our recommendations to be weaponized against us, similar to how other states, and I know this is off topic as it relates to predator management, but or grizzly control, but I think that particular terminology, I just wanted to give pause unless Fish and Game has a better terminology for that.
Yeah, I appreciate the caution, Tim, and I want to ask Greg or Toby on the call. I definitely share concerns about what best available science is. And there definitely has been some issues with that in other states. Colorado, Washington, for example, all come to mind. New Mexico, but I don't know what other term to replace it with. Does Toby or Greg, do you have any other terms that you've come across?
Well, I guess I'll agree with people's perception that the term best available science is, then it's, you know, something that I read in the Federal Register a lot in some of my work I do. So yeah, I don't really like it. I think I think we could just say supported by the science. I think that's fine. It doesn't say best available. Obviously, we're going to use the best available science we have. We're going to use the best available biology. I mean, but you know, it's we could say supported by the best biology or science, but I don't think we need best available. I think that's I don't know. I don't particularly love that term, those 2 words. But.
Jeremiah has his hand up.
So I know we're talking about that science base. I don't like the word science in there because it's ever changing. I think we should have like statistical data. There should be something hard fact on it in there versus the science, because we're learning new things all the time. But we should base it on hard data, historical data.
Nathan?
I agree with what Toby said, is getting rid of the best available. And then what Jeremiah said, you can always put in like data-driven approaches, things like that, where it's just kind of data-driven, that's done by our biologist.
Yeah, but there's, I mean, I guess if I could just say one other thing, there's data and then there's biological realities. I mean, you cannot, you know, you can go and try to gather data, but we don't gather data on the known biological realities. Those are the science part of it. I mean, yeah, we try to collect data and make data-driven management decisions. Absolutely, that's what we do. That's our job. But, you know, the fact that a mule deer gives birth on the 5th of June, average anywhere in Idaho, that's just a fact. I mean, it's not statistics, it's science. That's what they do. You know, just as an example. So I think science bugs people, but I think it fits it, unless people would like biology, because that would be my other term.
Dylan?
Yeah, I'm kind of bouncing around on this one myself too. Does it necessarily have to be in there? Because as it is right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I'm reading it is it has to qualify, you know, supported by the best available science. What if there isn't science or there isn't data on something, but we all know that it's right? You know, does that make sense? So there's, you know, things that could be proposed that there hasn't been studied and hasn't been, you know, but then they ask for us to make a judgment call on it. So
Just a kind of a reminder about where we are. This is the principles that you've agreed have informed your development of your advice. Now, there is a possible recommendation to be considered later this evening about whether you want to recommend that the Fish and Game Commission use these principles going forward. But today, and what we're looking at right now is a principle that informed you in your development of your recommendations. So, Bryce?
Yeah, I had two comments. One related to Dylan's last one. Just because some of these are yes or no and this perceptions of recommendations of reasonable doesn't mean it's completely disregarded or not, right? There's never going to be a scenario where a recommendation hits on every single one of these to the fullest extent. So this is kind of just a guiding principle. So I think when we initially proposed this, there's some bit of additional language of, yeah, if the first three are yes or the last one's no, or however that works out, then there should be serious consideration of whether this falls within the scope of a technology that needs to be addressed. So I get what you're saying, but I think that might be a little bit too far into the weeds. My second comment is I think leaving or changing the wording for the best available science is really a moot discussion. If you remove best available, still the decision should be on the science that is the best available or most reasonable or based on the best data at hand, right? So I think we could split hairs all day on how we want to phrase it, but again, as just a general umbrella of what makes for good decision making is good data that is based on science, biology that can then inform management. So I think we could spin our wheels on how we want to rephrase or address this wording for science, but I don't know. That's just my 2 cents.
Dustin?
Bryce kind of filled it out, but correct me if I'm wrong, but these are the principles that we're looking at for our decisions as to coming up with a recommendation. So it has nothing to do with what the legislature, with whoever else thinks it is. If we want to make it simplistic for everybody, is recommendations based in science. Leave it at that. That leaves the door open just as much as anything else does. But I think we're focusing too much on this little bit and not enough on actually getting it through and focusing on what the real problem is actually coming up with a recommendation that we can put forth. Not necessarily in the nitpicking of our wording from 4 weeks ago that we came up with this, but just to understand that it is what we put through for the last 5 meetings. We all understand what it means. And that's all that matters, is that as long as we in the group understand what that means, then I think we can probably leave it as a done issue.
I'm not sure I know where we are. If it said, is the recommendation supported by the biological science? Where's Toby?
Just science in general, because we can nitpick biological science, we can bend statistics to however we want them to say.
So
So
is
no
the
matter how
recommendation
we word
supported
it,
by science?
just general science as a whole, because that's what it comes down to, right? Whether it's statistical science, biological science, environmental science, we could nitpick everything back down as much as we want to, but as long as everybody on this panel understands what we mean by being based in science, then I think that simplifies it for every understanding. I could be wrong, but I think that would be the best, easiest way to put it to bed.
So is the recommendation supported by science?
Correct.
Hallie?
I'll just say I agree with that. Yeah, let's move on.
Okay, another opportunity to speak now or forever hold.
It's good as is.
Okay. Then I'm going to do a roll call. And when I call your name, I want you to say, yes, you support these principles as being what you as a group use to develop your recommendations, or no. So we're trying for consensus here. So Derek,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Jason Carr,
Yes.
Jeff Chules.
Yes.
Thank you. Ken Crane,
Yes.
Tim Frost,
Yes.
Nathan Guy,
Yes.
Dylan Halverson.
Yes.
Thank you. Larry Hatter,
Yes.
Hallie Hemingway,
Yes.
Kim Johnson,
Yes.
Jeremiah Manny,
Yes.
Alex Martin,
Yes.
Bryce Oldemeyer.
Yes.
Has Kevin Rogers shown up? Okay.
No.
Tal Sampson,
Yes.
Jeff Shin,
Yes.
Nicole Swafford,
Yes.
Doug Talbot,
Yes.
Rob Thornberry,
Yes.
Jason Top,
Yes.
Dustin Webster.
Yep. Yes.
Well, congratulations. You just reached consensus on your first item. And we will not have a call for consensus again today, but I wanted to go through the experience once so you know what it feels like, and that's what's going to happen at the next meeting. So we are ready to move forward. In this, after the break, we're going to have two breakout rooms, rounds of breakout discussions. And I want to go over some recommendations that could be tackled today. You're going to pick your own poison for this adventure. So we're going to do a roll call again and ask you which two topics you want to talk about. The first three options are in round one. There's an opportunity to talk about modern archery optics. This technology was opposed by only 42% of Idaho hunters in the statewide survey, and it was ranked number 8 by you as a group. One of the working group members noted that modern archery equipment has accounted for the largest increases in harvest rates over the last several decades. And I think that person felt that you should at least touch on it for that reason. The second one is modern muzzle loader technology. This was opposed by 49% of Idaho hunters and ranked number 6. That's not correct. 6 is not your number. I'm sorry that's a mistake on my part. I believe it was number 10, but at any rate, it wasn't in the top 7 because we've already talked about the top 7. So one working group member said, we should recommend maintaining current muzzleloader equipment restrictions and regulations. So that was the point, is just to maintain what's already on the books. Then the last one is long range hunting. And virtually every time I've asked whether you wanted to make additional recommendations, it's been suggested that long range hunting is something that you think you as a group should be dealing with. A couple of sample comments are long range hunting needs to be addressed and talked about. And the second one is, I think scope restrictions are hardest on rifle hunters, but ultimately the limits on long range hunting are good for all of the hunting community. So when we go to the quick pick opportunity, each of you will be invited to indicate your preference for 1, 2, or 3. So the second round, we have, yes.
Real quick, before you go to the second round, should we just go through people's picks on this one real quick so they can read it? And then we'll go to the second one and go through the picks.
I guess if you think we have time, sure.
It's 6:37 right now.
Oh, we're good. Okay. All right. So another round robin or another roll call. Derek?
1 and 2.
Oh, you only get 1.
Oh, let's go with 2.
Matt?
1 and 3.
No, you only get 1.
I'll do 1.
Okay. Jason? Carr?
I'll do 2.
Okay. Jeff?
2.
Ken Crane?
2.
Jason, did you have a question before we get to you?
Yeah, the only question I had is what the 1 and 2 you have, what was put out by the statewide survey, but with 3 that was left.
I apologize. I can't fit long range hunting into the terminology, the technologies that were evaluated in the survey. So that's the reason it's not. Thank you for pointing that out. It doesn't fit neatly in the technologies. That doesn't keep you all from telling me you wanted to talk about it, though.
Gotcha.
Okay. All right, Tim?
1.
Nathan?
Before I pick, are we going to be able to work on each one of these, or is it one and don't get to touch the other one?
No, you're only going to work on 1 this afternoon.
But all of us are going to work on one of these 3 in the working group.
Exactly.
Okay, 3 for me then.
Okay. Dylan?
Sorry, 2.
Thank you. Larry?
3 is long range, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll take that.
Okay. Hallie?
1.
Kim?
3.
Jeremiah?
Okay, so this is the stuff that we're going to be like working on today. Like, if I pick 3, that's what I'm going to be discussing.
Yes.
All right, I'll do 3.
Okay. Alex?
1.
Chelsea? Oh, she's not here. Bryce?
2.
Yeah. Is Kevin here yet?
No.
Okay. Tal?
Yeah, I haven't been in a group with Wendy yet, so I'm going to pick 3.
I don't think you mean me.
Or Kim, I mean.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. Jeff Shin? Jeff Shin?
I'll go with 3.
Okay. Nicole?
3.
Wow, three's popular. Doug Talbot.
I was gonna say 3.
Okay. Rob?
3.
3?
3.
Okay. Jason Top?
3.
Justin Webster?
Go with 1.
Okay. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, and the rest for 3. All right. Round 2 this out or later today is going to give us 4 more choices. You'll recall from the January 4th meeting, there was a lot of energy around the idea of Idaho Fish and Game doing more education to support all the work that is central to what you've been talking about. So I don't know if it would be focused strictly on fair chase or if it's broader than that, but what kind of an education recommendation would you like to make to Idaho Fish and Game? The second one is that it's been suggested that you could transmit your principles, recommend that your principles be used by the Fish and Game Commission in the future for looking at emerging technologies or new technologies. So take the work that you've done in developing your principles and keep it moving forward as a way for the department to think about whether technology is appropriate or not. The next one is something that was suggested by one of you that said any technology that learns from data should be taken into consideration and dealt with. And then a final one is a number of you have noted that there are inconsistent dates in I don't know if they have to be consistent, but it's been suggested that they could be made more consistent. And I've got a slide for that point exactly. So in the night vision, I'll just let you read these. These are the ones that you've indicated that there should be a relevant dates associated with the recommendations. So going back to the round 2, is there a group that would like to tackle putting consistency in the dates on all of your recommendations so that they don't appear to be working at cross purposes to each other? So any questions about this second round that we'll have this evening? And it will have a little bit less time to be worked on than the previous round.
I have one. So on the dates, you're saying if all of them will be the same, like, is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that some of the working group members have pointed out that the dates appear to be inconsistent. And so that particular group would take a look at that and decide whether there needs to be consistency or not. I'm not asserting an opinion on that. Any other questions about these 4? Does anyone want to elaborate on number 6?
Number 6, I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Yeah, we can.
Last time when we were talking, we had a issue with our group of coming up what was meant by AI. And it was determined that AI is something that you can feed information to and then it learns from it. And in that, it was talking about using sound and things like that for hunting. So we had confusion last time on like if the game ears and things like that would be considered AI, but if it's not learning, it wouldn't be considered AI. I think that's why that's in there. It would have to be something that's learning.
Okay. Hallie?
I just want to make the recommendation that we skip number 6. It seemed apparent to me last time that none of us really know enough to make an educated recommendation based on AI technology without a bunch of educational resources. So, I mean, I would just suggest that we skip number 6.
I think you mean number 7. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, you do mean number 6. I'm sorry. So technology that learns from data, skip that one. We are going to try to tackle AI again today in the next work time. But Hallie's suggesting that 6 not be an option for round 2.
I would second that.
Okay.
I agree. If we're gonna address it later.
Well, we AI as a whole thing rather than just this piece. Okay. So when we do the second round robin, your choices will be 4, 4, 4, 5, and 7. Right? Okay. Should we go backwards order? Getting tired of alphabetical? You don't care, do you? Okay. Derek,
I'll go with 7.
Matt,
I'll go with the last one, number 7.
okay.
Killing me.
Jason Carr,
4.
Jeff C,
5.
Ken Crane. You're muted. Oh,
Yeah,
there.
4.
Okay. Tim Frost,
I'll go with 7.
okay. Nathan Guy,
7.
Dylan,
7.
okay. Larry Hatter,
Which one was education?
4.
Yeah, I'll do 4.
Okay. Hallie,
5.
Kim,
4.
Jeremiah Manny,
I'm going to do 4.
okay. Alex, did Alex respond? Oh, you're muted.
I'm muted. I'm sorry. 4, please.
Okay. Bryce,
Me as well.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
4, please.
Okay. Hal Sampson,
4.
okay. Jeff Shin,
4.
Nicole.
Sounds like 5 needs some team members, so I'll go 5.
Oh, good. Doug Talbot,
7.
Rob Thornberry,
7.
Jason Top,
Well, there's so many people on 7. I'll go with 5.
okay, thank you. And Dustin.
Going to 5 as well. Balance it
Okay.
out.
Great. Well, thank you for helping us organize the second half of the meeting tonight. I did not have enough data on you all to assign you. So with that, we're going to move into polishing draft recommendations that are already in the books. Draft are already on the books. So we're going to give you till 7:15 to consider the feedback and refine the wording as you see fit. And then you need to be prepared to share the results of your work. Someone needs to take responsibility for sending me the final words at the end of the meeting or after the end of the meeting. So, smart optics. The recommendation was to keep the current regulations in place. And this graph, 17 of you did the homework assignment, and this gives you the results. So you can see that there was no perception of negative impacts according to your principles. This includes fairness, but at any rate, So my recommendation is that this one needs no further work. So no small group work on this one today. For transmitting trail cameras, the recommendation is for the purposes of hunting and scouting for big game ungulates, no transmitting trail cameras may be used from July 1st through December 31st on public or public access properties. There are a few comments that I wanted to share from working group members. One person said, everyone that I've heard from except one are opposed to location sharing, but are okay with cell phone cameras. And the second one said, I agree that there needs to be changes, but it's not possible to police them on private ground, which would give landowners a leg up on everyone else. I feel that if you're penalizing people who are less fortunate at that point, I feel that you're penalizing people who are less fortunate at that point. Probably something more fair would be a law stating that cellular trail cameras cannot transmit pictures or videos within 24 hours of taking them. But there is probably no way to police that. There you can see that there was negative reactions according to reasonableness, representation, and fairness. So my proposed team to work on refining this particular recommendation includes Derek, Matt, Jason Carr, Larry, Hallie, Alex Martin, Tal Sampson, Jason Top, and Dustin Webster. The third one is transportation, and the recommendation is advancements in motorized access enhance hunter opportunities, but must be managed to protect wildlife populations. Increased access can heighten hunting pressure and habitat disruption, impacting wildlife behavior and disruption. Idaho Fish and Game, in partnership with the authorities that have jurisdiction, should ensure decisions are made at the local level, recognizing the trade-offs for all stakeholders on public lands. Access policies should balance opportunity with conservation, promoting fair chase and sustainable hunting through strategic management. There wasn't quite as much negative feedback on this one as there was the prior one, but there was a little bit. And so I propose that Jeff C., Ken Crane, Tim Frost, Kim Johnson, Jeremiah Manny, Kevin Rogers, and Doug Talbot tackle this one. We're coming up to the more complicated situation, which is artificial intelligence. And you'll recall that no draft recommendation came out of the last meeting with regard to artificial intelligence. So I remind you that it was ranked number 5 by the working group members, and it's opposed by 91% of Idaho hunters in the statewide survey. The current legal situation is that it's unlawful when incorporated or attached to or incorporated in a firearm, and it's lawful when it's not attached to or incorporated in a firearm. So the small group that I'm proposing for this one are Nathan Guy, Dylan, Chelsea, Bryce, Jeff Shin, Nicole, and Rob. Now I wanted to share with you the feedback. And I think I actually have 2 whole slides here. Yeah, I do. So I'm not going to read these, but I want to give you a minute or 2 on each of these slides to take it in. Go back for the second slide. Okay. Holly, there's the point that we just got rid of at the bottom here, isn't it? So, part of the allocation of time for this next work session was to give the AI folks some room to work. So any questions about what we're doing in this round? So you have until 7:15 to consider what's in front of you and decide on wording for a recommendation if you see fit, and come prepared to share with the rest of the group. So with that, Ellery will put you in groups. One group will stay, but I'm not sure which one.
Yep, so the transmitting trail camera group will stay in this main room, and the artificial intelligence and transportation groups are going into breakout rooms. So here y'all go. And remember to designate someone to take notes.
Thank you.
All right, transmitting trail camera group, have at it.
Is there any way we can get the verbiage to display for everyone, or do we just need to look at it individually?
Thank you. I was actually going to ask the same thing.
All right, you're talking about what was on the slide?
Yeah, if you could share the slide with us.
We are being too bright.
Did I get into the wrong group? Is this the?
No, you're in the right group.
Okay.
It's transmitting trail cameras, right?
I just didn't see
Correct.
that word here.
Okay.
I just didn't see Matt on this one.
Yeah, I'm in here.
There you are.
I'd say, we've got a season set there. I mean, are we happy with that season, the July 1st through December 31st? Do we need to adjust that? Do we need to change the recommendation period? I mean, we're kind of looking for finding. Are we happy with being a month or 2 months before any season's open? I mean, August 15th is typically the beginning of big game seasons. There's maybe one earlier, but
We got August 1st out on the desert.
I guess that would be a good place to start. Is
sorry, was that Matt?
You have the August 1st hunt out on some of those desert hunts. I don't like the December 31st. Lion season opens December 1st. Some guys use that for trapping and for watching for lions crossing. So I think that could be trimmed up a little bit on the back end.
Greg might be able to pitch in on this, but I mean, what do we think of just changing it to being like 48 hours or 1 week before and after a hunting season? Would that be? Or yeah, I have to be, because we're only working with big game ungulate seasons. We're not talking about wolf trapping, cougar hunting.
Still gonna be an enforcement bill.
Yeah, I think it's a little sketchy to identify a season. I think from a practical application, a physical date, I think if you're gonna I would recommend choosing a physical date. Just because seasons change. The commission has the ability to change seasons every year. So that can cause some confusion, and they might open deer season earlier than elk season. So I'm an advocate of the dates just from an enforceability standpoint.
what if they were a little more general, like 2 weeks before the first season and the last day of the last season, so that if those seasons change, there's wiggle room in the verbiage.
So again, that's going to be it's going to be too general because we have a very small number of seasons that open way early, and then we have a very small number of seasons that go into January or February. So you'd basically be blocking out half of the year. And I believe your focus would be primarily on those mule deer and elk seasons, which really are October, November.
Yep.
And what if we had a geographic component in there, like in the unit where the camera is, or something to that effect, where so that if a unit is already done with ungulate hunting, somebody could go in there and put up a camera to look for wolves or cats or whatever they're looking for, bears, whatever.
May I make a suggestion for the group to consider?
Please.
If folks are getting hung up on the date, like the specificities of the date, you could take a step back and propose that the commission create a transmitting trail camera season and leave it at that and let the commission work through what would be the most appropriate season length for that. So that way, if it needs to change, the commission can change it accordingly. If they think it needs to be shorter or longer, you're putting forth the recommendation that there is a season on trail cameras, but then letting the commission sort through what would be the most appropriate season as a potential. If y'all are getting hung up on 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there, what have you.
I like that idea. I feel like they could be the ones setting the season, not us. So,
Well, I'd like to play the devil's advocate too, and not to be that guy, but if trail cameras on one side of our spectrum on the statewide survey are 52-48, and pretty much 50-50, and then the way that's worded on that summary, live feeds and location sharing, I think we could have a lot of people in the public get a little fired up on this one, and the commission might see a lot of comments on that too, because I don't know. I can see that both ways. I could make an argument both ways on it. I don't think it really affects the harvest too much. That's me, but
I agree, Matt. Yeah, I would just say, from where I'm coming from, I'm having a hard time supporting this at all. From a perspective that, it wasn't really supported by a majority of people on the survey. There's a lot of younger people that like to use these cameras. And I think that, doing something that, from our principles isn't supported by, we don't have reason to believe that these cameras are increasing harvest rates. We don't have data on that. It's not supported by the public survey. I'm just having a hard time getting on board with any restrictions on trail cameras.
I look at it like the archery thing. And in a lot of ways, right? Like it makes it easier, hands down. And hunting shouldn't be easy. You should have to put the work out. If you're worried about a predator being on a bear bait, that's something else to discuss. We're not talking about bear baiting, right? Incidentally, yeah, you might have an elk walk through your bear bait, but it's going to be focused on your bear bait. I have yet to talk to anybody that use cameras for lion hunting. I'm in central Idaho. I know you're in southern Idaho, so I can't say that nobody does. I don't live in northern Idaho, so I don't know about people using those up there, right? But in my area, the only reason why you would have a digital trail camera out is so you can make that same day trip out to try to harvest that animal. And if you can't tell me that that does not increase a success percentage, then I think we're having a bath. I really, really honestly do. And I think we talked about public opinion and this and that and this and that. If you were to word it as, do you believe that people should have devices in the woods that allow them to track and find animals within a 2-hour period of killing that animal? Do you support that? People are going to say no every single time. So I think the public opinion thing here is convoluted when it comes down to the whole location sharing.
Hallie,
Right. But if we
can
look
I
at
ask
it
you,
purely
can I ask
just for
Hallie a question?
cameras. Go ahead.
Hallie, can I ask Hallie a question quick?
Sure.
Would you be more supportive if we could still use like Wendy proposed or someone proposed, we could still have cellular cameras, but there was a restriction on how soon they could send the data, the picture. Like it can't send it immediately, like 24 hours. You can't receive a picture, any sooner than that, or 12 hours or something like that. Just something that's not, immediately bang, you can tell there's a deer at your stand or something like
That
that.
would
Would you
be
be more
an industry change. You'd have to get the manufacturers of the cameras to be able
I
to change or
agree.
put a delay in them.
I agree. I'm just trying to find out, what sounds a little more reasonable to group members who obviously have different opinions here.
Oh no, I
Yeah,
I agree with that wholeheartedly. It's just got to
Justin,
be
let
within the
Hallie
realm of
speak,
Your
please.
question, Larry.
Sure.
I agree with you that that seems like a reasonable thing to do, but I also it's not enforceable at all. So to me, it's not a way to change, a perceived problem. And there's a lot of these things as I consider them that make sense on a regional or unit level, but on a statewide level, they don't. For instance, in where I live, if you get a picture of an animal so thick that you could go out there and you still won't find it. So it's a it's a regional thing. It's a way that people are using it thing, um, and I appreciate this comment that someone said that we can't police this on private ground, so we're giving an advantage to people that are landowners. So I don't like restrictions that benefit wealthy people and put less wealthy people at a disadvantage.
Agree, but don't forget too, a lot like has been discussed with us, a lot of this is going to be tough to enforce, a whole lot of subjects that we're doing. And if we get the 80% of people who abide by that rule, it might be better than nothing at all. Just something to keep in mind.
I'll jump in. I'm supportive with Hallie. I don't support the recommendation. The seasonality, I don't know. I'm really struggling with this and looking at the survey results are very similar to when we crossed this bridge about 5-6 years ago. There's a huge chunk of our state that doesn't have cell phone coverage to be able to transmit. You got the whole public-private interface. And yeah, I really struggle with this one. And we don't have the water issue that a lot of the other states, Arizona and Utah, had.
True.
So
I also agree with Holly. Moving this forward, I think that we should be looking at the surveys and everything else that's on here, and people want to keep using them, and we're gonna have quite an outcry, and it's not gonna be very fair to those folks as well. So I don't support it being on here.
Well, one thing we need to keep in mind is recommendations can go forward, and if they don't get voted for, they don't get voted for. That's
Right.
still going to be, people are still going to look at that. The commission is still going to look at it. They're going to look at, all right, 2020 to 3. So some of these things that we do are not going to be voted for by everyone. It's just the way it is. But there is going to be record of it, and there is going it's people are going to look at it and get a feel for how people are really feeling the dynamics of it. So I don't think it hurts. I don't think it hurts to have something like this and to vote on it, yay or nay. It doesn't have to be 100%. I mean, the thing is, yeah, the goal is to get there 100%, but there is no harm in have something that failed either. give it just more information for the commission to take in.
So talk about fairness and, giving advantage to people. If somebody can afford to buy 30 trail cameras and put them out and receive live feeds from all of them, does that not give them an advantage? If you can watch trails in over 80 square miles, does that not give you an advantage?
It
Well,
does.
there's lots of things that give people an advantage. I mean, there's people that don't have jobs. They can hunt every day of the season. That gives them an advantage, but I don't
But
need to
they have to
restrict
go
that
out and
from
hunt.
them.
Wait, is that how you do that? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Allie. Yeah, it's this is one of the harder ones, even in my own head. Like I have one single trail camera. It's not a wireless. I have to go out and physically check it. I put it out for a month. I got back to it and somebody had tampered with it. I had one picture, one single picture from that camera. I, live 100 miles away from where I put it. I don't get to check every weekend. So it's kind of a pain. It'd be nice to have one that just transmitted photos to me. But at the same time, I'm a firm believer, like Dustin said, of keeping hunting and not using technology to really give myself an advantage. But I understand, like, yeah, saying you can't use this because you can afford it is not fair. Saying these guys can use it but you can't is not fair. It's a hard one. This is one that I don't know if we're going to be able to reach consensus on. We might very well just be wasting our time on it. But
I don't think it's a waste. Honestly, I don't think it's a waste of time. I think I'm not a proponent of changing the wording of this. I think we should vote on it and what it is. It is. I'm not in support of changing because there's no. I can tell by trying to meet in the center that we're not going to get a consensus on this at all either way. So I say we put it out there, vote on it, call it good.
Later on, somebody will go through the dates. So if we're caught up on dates, right, that's supposed to be our round 2, so we can kind of cut that out. And as we talk about fairness for private property owners, okay, I'm surrounded by a lot of really big property. They already have an unfair advantage. It's not going to give a private property owner any more advantage than they already have over their acreage that they have with regular cameras out there. I think that's a moot point when it comes down to the public hunting, because that's a whole different style when you start talking about private property and landowners. The security purposes, that makes sense. It all depends on where that camera is pointing. You want enforceability? Easy. Is it pointing at a bear bait? All right, then it's a bear bait one. Right now, you're cat hunters and using that, like with Matt was talking about, that one is going to be a tough one. And I agree. This is one of those that's going to be split 50-50 throughout the public, just because there's some people that don't see it being advantage to be able to track that animal through the day and know where it's headed to. Right. And it absolutely does give the people with money, but the prices on them are coming down. So it's not going to be a rich man's game to have 4 or 5 of these cameras out. However, having 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or how many cameras out along a path, that absolutely does give you an advantage. And if we're talking about technology giving an advantage to hunters, if we block everything else out, that does give an absolute advantage. The dates, that one's going to be a very tough one. I just as soon say there's none out there, but I don't use them for wildlife photography or whatever else somebody may be using that for during a non-hunting, non-scouting season.
So I have a comment if I can. The other thing we haven't brought up here is, and last time this came up, like Derek was talking about, I agree with those from last time. The other variable we haven't brought up, I mean, I did bring up the cats and the bears. That's just gonna be something we're gonna have to deal with. But the other thing is different parts of the state, right? I've had several people comment on this both ways, but say portions of northern Idaho and Island Park where there is a grizzly bear structure in that spot. People are using those on certain water sources or trails. They're looking to see if there's any grizzly bears in the area for safety wise. And if they are seeing those, they're going to a different area. They don't have a ton of them there, but they've got on a couple different trails leading in that area, so they know if they're not seeing any. So that's a different aspect I don't think we've talked about so far. Kind of a safety aspect in certain areas. I go back and forth. This is a pretty tough one for me. I have a few of these, but I don't put them in one spot like you say, like trying to grid out that section. I have one here and I've got another one 30, 40 minutes away. I mean, they're quite a ways away. So, but that's me, right? Everybody's different. We all have our different thought processes on this. But that's where I'm at. I'm probably a no on this one, but there's a lot of variables on it. So,
Okay. We are back in the large group. Smart optics. Oh, we didn't do it. Transmitting trail cameras, that's where we are right now. We're right now in this main room. Was agreement made to change the draft recommendation?
I would say no. I'd say we just vote. We're just going to vote on it.
So move it forward to the final meeting.
Yeah, whichever way it goes, it goes.
That one we're having troubles with deciding whether or not it's a one valid dates, and two, is it really valid, kind of being a 50-50 option out there. So what we decided to come down with is we will leave it as is, and we will just see what if we can come to a consensus as a group about pushing it forward to the commission.
I think part of it is a difference in those of us where we stand on the ethics of this topic, and some of us we have varying opinions, I would say.
Okay. So you did not reach agreement on any way to change it. It moves forward as drafted at the last meeting.
That's correct.
That's what I'm understanding. Okay.
That's correct.
All righty. Transportation. Did you identify a spokesperson?
I'll jump in here. So on transportation, there was kind of a 3-sentence policy that talked about the need to address it and the reality that Fish and Game is not always the authority that has jurisdiction. Sometimes it's National Forest, sometimes it's BLM, etc. What we ultimately decided on was just to simplify the recommendation to the last sentence that's currently there. So it would just read, access policies should balance opportunity with conservation, promoting fair chase and sustainable hunting through strategic management. I think we recognize the recommendation is not entirely the most enforceable, but no matter what, everybody, at least all the conversations I've been in when we've discussed transportation, is it's something that needs to be addressed. It impacts the hunting experience. It impacts the ability as not just the hunting experience of us, but the hunting experience of people we bring along and the kids and the future and the heritage and things like that. But we also recognize that I don't know if we could singularly as a group come up with a solution. And so it removes some of the recommendations related to the local level, which I personally liked, but I also know that red tape reduction, sometimes simplifying is a little bit better. So in the spirit of wordsmithing, we got it down to 1 sentence.
Thank you, Transportation Group. Artificial Intelligence Group.
Yeah, I took notes, and I'll be dropping our recommendation in the chat in a second. But really, there's concerns about AI providing an unfair advantage in hunting, but it's really difficult to describe or point to one way that AI might manifest itself in creating unfair advantages in hunting. Currently, AI is largely just a broad catch-all for advanced modeling, is what it is. So trying to restrict the use of AI as a whole is overly ambiguous. So instead, we came up with a recommendation to essentially closely monitor the use of AI technology in the hunting world as it relates to the principles we develop. So our recommendation is just to keep a close eye on this as it develops, because it is relatively new and the applications of how folks are using AI change monthly. So that's our recommendation.
Thank you for that. Any questions for this group? And it is in the chat if anyone wants to read it. Okay. We have come, any questions for any of the groups, I guess, before we move forward? All right, well, let's go into a break. Do you want to go till 7:30? Give you a couple minutes.
Sure.
Extra. Okay, so we'll come back at 7:30 for round 1 and round 2 of the additional recommendations. Okay.
Wendy, 7:30 if you're there.
I am. I was trying to catch up on all the chat messages I missed. Sorry. Okay. Are we back? Am I sharing properly?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. So for the rest of today's meeting, we're going to be taking a look at drafting new recommendations. You'll have 35 minutes to draft and then 10 minutes to report and discuss for the first round. For modern archery optics, we have Matt B, Tim F, Hallie H, Alex M, Dustin W, and Kevin R. For modern muzzleloader technology, we've got Derek A, Jason C, Jeff C, Ken C, Dylan H, and Bryce O. And then for long range hunting, Nathan, Larry, Kim, Jeremiah, Tal, Jeff S, Nicole, Doug, Rob, and Jason T. Are you ready, Ellery?
Yes, ma'am. Let me just make sure I have my time correct here. And we do.
Okay.
All right. So long range shooting is going to stay in the main room. Modern archery and modern muzzleloader technologies are going to be going into breakout rooms. Please remember to designate someone as a note taker. And here y'all go.
I'm going to stop sharing.
All right, long range shooting crew, have at it.
Okay, who's the note taker?
No kicking, no biting. Okay. All right, let's establish some ground rules.
Who's gonna be the note taker?
I'll take notes.
Perfect. Wendy or Greg, are you guys able to share the current law we have on the books with Idaho Fish and Game for rifles? Is it just no no electronics on the gun except for a battery operated scope? Is that in a nutshell, Greg? Is that about right?
Yes, and there's a 16-pound weight limit. I think that's, yeah, electronics 16 pounds. There's no caliber restrictions. I think that's it, unless I missed something, Toby. Maybe Toby's not in here.
No, I think Greg.
Oh, sorry.
Well, I'm probably gonna be the opposite of most in this group. Is my recommendation is gonna be to leave it alone. Not change it based off of the survey that was put out. 94% of the public, I believe it was, wanted to keep it the same. And I agree with that. I think if they want to make a change for seasons, that's something that the Fish and Game can look at. If they want to change seasons around the long range weapons, or maybe for regions, that's something they need to look at. But as far as long range shooting, the old Sharps rifles, they shot 1,000-yard shoots with the old Sharps rifles back in the day. They still do it with dynamite shoots.
Yep.
Without scopes, it's just
Something I wanted not to interrupt you, man. Something I wanted to bring up. It's kind of the current regulation, like Greg had mentioned, the 16-pound with no caliber restriction. With a lot of guns now these days from that you're seeing, unless you're buying a super expensive like Christensen arms, that's carbon fiber and all that, a lot of the guns are starting to approach that 16-pound limit. And from my understanding, the weight restriction was to prevent people going out with like 50 BMGs, 416 Hellfires, 416 Barretts, things like that. And I feel that that's kind of an obsolete thing anymore these days. And I would recommend more or less doing a rim restriction. So nothing smaller than a 223 rim, and nothing bigger than, say, a 300 Norma Mag rim. And that's a pretty easy thing that's black and white. If it doesn't fit through the hole on the large side, it's illegal. And then no restriction for rim cases. So that's like your 303 British, 4570, things like that.
Hey, Jason, you mentioned that there was a public survey on long distance shooting. What survey are you talking about?
I'm talking about the survey that was sent out where the 2,400 people replied back.
But what I didn't see anything there on long range. I saw a scope restriction. Are you for a scope restriction?
No, I'm not for a scope restriction either.
No. I'm saying what specific, because I didn't see that in the charts that we asked any of the public if they opposed long range shooting or they were in favor of it. You gave a percentage. What was that percentage?
I want to say it was 94% on what I read.
Yeah, 94% on what?
It was on the long range shooting to be left alone.
I didn't see that survey.
I'll go back and see if I can find it.
Yeah, I don't know if I've seen that either. The public
Yeah,
comment feedback is it's the second most opposed
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, it's
The public comment was separate from the survey that went out itself.
Right, but that random survey didn't have a question on it. My wife got that random survey, so it didn't have a question on it. Are you opposed or in favor of long distance shooting? All it had is if there were, scopes, high powered scopes. Are you in favor of reducing the scope power? That's the only thing I saw on long distance shooting.
Let me jump in here real quick. I have the survey pulled up. There was 2 separate questions that talked about the buckets of technologies. There was no specific technology bucket that specifically said long range shooting.
Okay.
There was buckets of technologies of equipments that could be used in long range shooting. So for example, range finders, rifle scopes, modern scopes. There's a list of things in there that could be used for long range shooting, but there was not a specific question in that survey about long range shooting defined as.
So I missed.
Yeah, because
I have
it'd be
the
far
slide
from
with the
94%.
findings from the survey up. Would you want me to share it?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. It's right here.
Yeah, I see the modern rifle cartridges capable of killing game at long range. And then they have a rifle scope with built-in rangefinders. Or they have the
Yeah,
modern.
but that doesn't say anything about long range.
Yeah, well, it does. It says killing game at long range.
Yeah, but there's people that have 300 ultra mags that shoot deer at 300 yards. They're not gonna be in favor of restricting a caliber.
I'm not in favor of restricting any caliber as well.
Neither would I. I would definitely wouldn't be in favor of that.
All right. So it sounds like with that, we might be on the same page now, because the way I read that was that people were trying to restrict long range, but the people were not. And it looks like it was 64%.
Yeah, and that was more on the rifle restriction. It had nothing to do with long range.
Jeff, I see your hand up, and Nate, I see your hand up after Jeff.
I think Nate was ahead of me.
Go ahead, Jeff.
All right. So, yeah, I guess I have, just to give some full transparency here, I'm not a big fan of long range shooting. I don't think that long range hunting as a term has any place in our vocabulary. That said, I know that people are take some responsible long range shots. Looking at the feedback we're getting from the groups or just the public, there's quite a bit of opposition towards long range shooting, but I'd see very little opposition towards limiting the technology that allows that. So for that reason, I mean, even though I don't like the long range shooting, I would recommend we do not make changes simply because people I talk to that are long range enthusiasts will find a way to shoot long range, even with a lot of restrictions in place. I mean, you practice well, you build a load, you can shoot long range with a lot of guns and a lot of cartridges. So I recommend we do not make any make any changes to the technology.
Who's next? Is that Nathan?
Yeah.
He may be frozen.
Looks like
I
it's
think he
frozen.
would.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to go after Nathan, but if he's frozen, I'll go ahead and take a stab at it. This was a subject that really interested me when coming to deal with this group. Some of my feelings have actually changed listening to everybody. I would say I actually more align with like Jason Top, what he said at the beginning, he could be in support potentially of, if the fishing game want to make some seasons where they're dealing with some different type of weaponry, maybe for management purposes. He might support that, but as far as telling every Idahoan what they can and can't and how far they can't shoot, you can't really police it. B, this is Idaho, it's America, it's one of the last good places. I don't think we should be telling people, how far you can and can't shoot. I've seen a lot of support for education on this subject, from a lot of different people, something we can do, to our youth for the future. Let's dive into long range ethics, and for the kids, or even for older folks who want to get into it, let's hold some classes. So I think everybody could support that. I'd actually be on board with a recommendation that we keep our hands off of this topic as far as telling people what they can and can't shoot and how far they can shoot it. I also would be very much in support, like Jason said, if the fishing game is doing, for instance, the mule deer group, big deal, right? And down in unit 73 and 73A, mule deer numbers crashed because of the winter, whatever. The group pretty much came out with a recommendation that said instead of making this a draw and potentially losing our opportunities here, let's look at some short range opportunities to keep it open to the general public. And hopefully then mule deer numbers will come back and then we can open it up to any weapon again. I think, between those three aspects, I would make a recommendation that hunters can shoot whatever they want. It's not our business to tell the next person what they can and can't shoot. I would recommend that we increase the amount of education for ethics in the practice, get our kids knowing what's ethical and what's not. And also, I think we should really, really consider getting behind the mule deer group who said, in units that are under objective, are sensitive, we'd also support, shorter range weaponry seasons as opposed to going to draws. I have a unit next door. I was told about 10 days ago by our commissioner for the Clearwater region that unit 14 cannot sustain the long range hunting in that unit. Unfortunately, it's very open. There's roads on every ridge and the elk just get hammered. So they are either going to shut it down, it's going to be a draw, or they would be open to, potentially utilizing some shorter range stuff. Now, that's not every unit in the state, but there are a couple sensitive units under objective units that we could utilize, just like Jason said earlier, we could get behind those couple places. If the fishing game feels it appropriate to utilize some shorter range weaponry for this objective. I would support all three of those things. What do you guys feel on that subject?
So I'll go. I don't know if anybody's saying I threw my hand up, but I'm all for that on that. But I think the education piece is going to be critical. I see too many times people go buy a gun, whatever it is. They see something on YouTube and they're like, "Oh, I got the gun, I got the scope, now I can go shoot it." But they really, truly don't understand the terminal ballistics on half the ammunition that they're shooting. They don't practice it or anything. So I'm a firm believer in education, bringing that into the hunter safety courses, and make positive changes that way so people can make ethical decisions on shooting long range.
Yeah, I like it.
Maybe I'll say, sorry, my internet Starlink died out here for 2 minutes, so I jumped back on. I'm back with the leave the current rule how it is. We're Idaho. We're a pretty free state, and the fishing game directives is we're an opportune state. So I don't see restricting somebody's decision to shoot long range, depending on what you think long range is. Because I know my distance is different than somebody else's distance, and I like the education part. That if we can educate the people on, the ethics of ethical shot is, I mean, if you, like you said, you went and bought your gun and ammo the week before season, shot on a pie plate, you shouldn't be taking a 800-yard shot. But I'm for keeping the current status quo on it.
Are you ready for me to stop sharing?
Yeah.
Tal, I see you raising your hand in the screen, but not on the feature, so I was acknowledging you.
Yes, thank you. Hey, so the Mule Deer Committee down here, the 12-member committee worked for 6 months to put some proposals in, and they made some changes. And it took me a minute to kind of figure this out, what they were asking, because I know a couple of guys on that committee, and what they actually wanted to do was take the scopes off rifles. And because that wasn't a weapons choice in Idaho, and I was asked 2 months ago about this, and I did ask Greg, and I remember talking to Greg about it. And does anybody know if it's true what the region down here told the Fish and Game, in which I've talked to some of those regional biologists and also the supervisor down here, and it's true there isn't a weapons choice of taking the scope off. Is that something that we need to look at with the HAC committee? Because that's definitely a move in the direction of limiting opportunities, with a rifle. So because they couldn't make this, all 12 members wanted to take the scopes off the rifles for the hunts they implemented, but they couldn't do that. They were told they couldn't do that because that wasn't a weapons choice by Idaho. So they went to muzzleloader. Well, if you can only imagine what that was like going to the regional going to the meetings with people that have hunted with a rifle for years, for the last 100 years, and now they got to go out and buy a muzzleloader. So there was 9 out of the 12 that wanted the muzzleloader hunts put in for that. And obviously they, that's what they put in, and that was the proposal, and it's in. So, do you know anything about the weapons choice? Greg, Toby?
So let me jump in here real quick. This group, if they wanted to, could have the discussion about bringing forth a recommendation to create a new weapons class, which would be like an optics limited rifle season or a no optics rifle season. The group could discuss that, and if consensus was had, to direct the Fish and Game to direct the commission to create a new weapons class to then use that where it deemed necessary or prudent. The group could do that.
Can I just clarify? You said direct, but this group doesn't have the capacity to direct.
Correct. It would be a recommendation.
Okay.
Correct. Thank you, Wendy. So if you wanted to make a recommendation for a new weapons class that then the commission would use just like its other weapons classes, like its muzzleloaders, like its short range, like its archery, like its, all weapon seasons, this group could do that, yes.
And that's necessary, right? That's necessary as far as if they want. So what the Fish and Game had told them is they got to take that off the plate. That isn't something that they can do as a mule deer committee. It's something that the commission has to adopt that as a weapons choice. And currently there is no rifle without scope. So is that true?
I'm not understanding what you mean by necessary. There currently is no weapons class that is specific to modern rifles with no scopes.
Right. And so they couldn't make the proposal. That's what they were told. So it just seems like there's some
I understand what you're saying, Tal. But I can't speak to what they were or weren't told. I wasn't a part of those conversations, and I don't believe Toby or Greg were either. But what I'm telling you is that if this group wanted to have that conversation, they could make such a recommendation.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I've been approached by several people asking about that. And according to the Fish and Game and some of the group, down here, they believe that's what we're doing in the HAC committee. They said that's a HAC committee's job. And I says, I don't think we've talked about, using that as a weapons choice. But just like Larry said, obviously nobody wants to restrict the equipment, or very few people do. That might be something that we talk about is making a recommendation that we can remove a scope if they're, and add another weapons choice. That way they can use it, the Fish and Game can use it, as another tool. They're doing it down in Utah. They've got, I believe, 4 hunts. I called them today that'll go into effect this year, that they ran through their commission, a year and a half ago.
I mean, I would be supportive of something like that as far as, if they wanted to try out, for management purposes and under objective units, if you wanted to try out, a traditional rifle season, that's fine, but I'm not hanging my hat on it either. I want to get something people can get behind. And if that's, if that muddies the water too much for everyone, that's acceptable by me. I would like to get something there that we do support as opposed to going to draws in management cases.
Absolutely.
And basically everyone has always said out of this group, the number one thing is don't stop our opportunity. Don't cut down on our opportunity to hunt every year and make memories with our children or family members or whatever. If we can avoid going to draw units, for under objective units, and maybe, just supporting the Fish and Game's ability, to use shorter range options in those specific units where it's necessary. That would be fine for me and the hundreds of people in Grangeville, Idaho, and Idaho County that really need something here. We have been kind of thrown under the bus for the last 30 years almost now. Our elk numbers are under objective. The people want something like this. They can get on board with this. I suggest if we can come up with something that recommends that we keep our hands off of long range hunting, let people choose what they want to hunt with. This is America. This is Idaho. This is Idaho County. Great. Definitely increase our education levels with long range shooting. So, the kids, the youth can learn how to do it and be more proficient and ethical. Great. And, let's get behind what the mule deer group said. And, in management cases, we do support, the use of shorter ranger technology strictly for management purposes. But, in units where you're above objective and there's no need, nobody's going to tell an Idahoan, what they can and can't do and what they can and can't shoot.
So Larry, one of the most important things at the meetings, because I went to several of the meetings around here, is there's a valid argument that kids have a hard time shooting muzzleloaders. And so if you can take the scope off, a 243 and let them, it was a big complaint at some of these meetings, is a lot of hunters, they're not going to be able to leave their kid or have their kids hunt in the spots that they've hunted for years and years and years. So that was kind of an avenue that they wanted to go originally, but taking the scope off a rifle would definitely be, better for kids and for the overall majority of people in Idaho, where muzzleloaders aren't, that big of the population of hunts that we can go out and actually do. So Anyway, if you guys could get on board with that, I could.
I can get on board with it, but it's not 100% necessary either. I mean, just as, you know, if it muddies the water too much.
Jeremiah, I see you had your hand up for a minute.
Yeah. So I've never heard of this mule deer group or anything like that. Obviously, it's a small group with a certain interest. I don't think I would want a group trying to push an agenda on all of Idahoans for a special interest. We want to just do all this decision-based stuff that we're trying to talk about here for the majority of Idaho, not a special interest group. So I'm for with, short range weapon seasons and stuff like that. And I know you talked about 243s with scopes where some youth have problems. That comes with practice and education. As a long range shooter, as a instructor, it's proper gun setup. You got length of pulls, you got cheek risers. There's so many other things that are
Yeah, that wasn't, I was talking about 243 and muzzle loaders. 243, where the 10-year-old couldn't shoot a muzzle loader because of the kick, the recoil, can go to a 243. I wasn't talking about kids having trouble shooting 243s with scopes.
Right. But you were saying taking the scope off.
Right, but if you go to short weapon seasons, they're going to have to go to a muzzle loader, and going to a muzzle loader for a young kid might be a problem.
Cal, can I speak to that real quick?
Yeah.
Sure. So my daughter started shooting muzzleloader at 9. The average weight of a 243 is 11 foot-pounds. The average weight of a 50 cal muzzleloader with 90 grains of granules in there is 15 pounds. It's not that big a difference. So that's, to me, kind of a mute point. The kids can shoot it. Second, if we start going to iron sights on rifles as a gun arms dealer, we're going to be very hard pressed to find a rifle these days with iron sights. They're not out there anymore. They rarely manufacture them. We have short range already. You want to shoot short range, you want to shoot muzzleloader, they have those options too. But I mean, you're not finding 243s with iron sights right now.
Yeah.
Point for consideration, real quick, where you're talking iron sights, and I just want to make sure that this conversation is as robust as it needs to be. You're talking about taking scopes off of rifles. What about limiting scopes to a certain power on a rifle? So instead of having a no optics rifle, what if it was a limited optics situation? Again, not pushing any perspective on this, just want to make sure that the conversation goes through all the various options of the idea that was brought forth by the Mule Deer Working Group.
Okay, so I'll take a stab at that one. I'm opposed for limiting magnification and optics performance. That goes back to what we talked about in one of the previous meetings about being able to identify game. If you're stuck with a 3x9 scope and you have to take that 300-yard shot and it's low light conditions or dense forest, are you really going to be able to see that? If you had, say, a 4x16 scope or a 4-24, you could see it. And you got to take in the consideration of not everybody's vision is good. So the optic is enhancing that for them to make an identification and proper shots.
I just threw out that the Fish and Game already has short range weapons seasons and short range weapons restrictions. And so if we were wanting to recommend that, I would stick with their existing regulations for that and just recommend increasing those types of hunts in those areas that it's needed.
I'm with Jeff on that. Just, it's just a show of support. We're not telling anybody they can or can't shoot anything. We're just saying, hey, yeah, in these, we would rather you use some shorter range technology options as opposed to making these units draws, because that is basically the number one thing that this group has identified as we do not want to see opportunity being taken away from our hunters. We want our kids to be able to hunt every year. You know, utilize this way of management as opposed to putting it on a draw. And you know, your child might get an elk tag in the next 6 or 7 years. You know, that's what we want to avoid.
So you have
But,
5
you know,
more minutes just to be aware of time.
And I think there's people in the room that probably haven't had a chance to speak yet, too.
Yep.
Who hasn't had a chance to speak yet?
Doug, Nicole, Kim, Rob.
Yeah, I've just been listening, to the different sides. I guess I'm of the opinion that it's a pretty serious issue. I don't think there's anything as far as a recommendation that we can make that will tackle all aspects of this, right? Like I know Utah did a couple years ago, and they didn't come up with a long range hunting recommendation. They are trying some of those open site only hunts, like on a test basis for the next few years to see how that goes. I guess I'm of the opinion or the recommendation of I don't know if there's any changes we can make. I'm very hesitant to just start making open rifle seasons everywhere. I don't know unit 14. I don't hunt up north. I don't know if that's a draw hunt. I don't know if that's a over the counter hunt.
It's an over the counter hunt.
Okay, so like if you make that a muzzleloader only, do you think every single person that's currently hunting that is just going to still hunt there, or are they just going to get pushed into other units?
Well, what's going to happen is they're going to make it a draw to deal with the problem, and if there is no other option, and actually what they're trying to do is trying to move some of the hunters who currently just lay in there like thick like flies because you can see a long ways, and push them into other units. That's what the goal is. But the fishing game is running with some issues as far as how do we do that? Do we make it a draw? Do we shut it down so people can only get a tag every 5 or 6 years? Or do we use some options like archery, muzzleloader, traditional rifle, whatever, so people can still hunt it, but maybe not be quite as devastating as, let's just be honest, long range capabilities are in certain situations. Not everywhere, but like that unit needs some serious help. And that's why the commissioner told me the other day, yeah, we're going to shut it down. Something has to happen.
So I have to cap the numbers of tags there too.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fishing game has a lot of management tools, right? I mean, they have the biologists, they have the numbers. I think they're the ones that need to start. I don't think we can tell them seasons and those kind of things. I mean, they're the ones that have to.
No, but the commissioner told me word for word he would like to see something out of the group that supported some different technologies as opposed to going to a draw. And I'm just I could probably get in trouble for telling you.
Does it have an archery hunt, Larry?
It does not. It does not.
I mean, that's
it does not have a muzzle loader.
They can regulate it by at the end of the day, if it can only support X amount of animals, that's how they're going to have to manage it for it. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Jump in, Kim.
So are we saying that we're just going to leave it as it is in the regulations right now? The one thing that I think is really important, and a few people have mentioned it, is the education on long range shooting, and ethics are taught to new hunters about all of this. I don't know, can we add that in there somehow into the
Well, I
regs?
was noticing that Larry, Kim, and Jeremiah are all in the education group, so maybe you can carry that forward into round 2.
Yeah, I think education is key for all of this stuff. For a majority, I think we can solve a lot of problems with education. Now, whether people do the right thing or not with that education, that's a personal choice.
That's always the way it is. Yep.
I would
Yeah,
say
I don't know. I just don't think that changes much from where we're at right now.
I think the group recommends that we stay with the current rule on hand.
I agree with that.
Oh, Tal is too. I'm sorry, Tal. I just realized that.
What's that?
Tal and Jeff are in education as well. So you've got a lot of folks going from this group into the education discussion. We're going to get pulled back in less than a minute.
So I'm the note taker here. Are we just saying we're going to recommend that we keep the same rules as we currently have? Noticing that it is a complex issue. What is everybody's opinion on that?
I'm good with that.
Yep.
I'm not at a spot where I'm ready to recommend different hunts and take, because you can say we don't want to tell people how to hunt, but you're doing that in what they can hunt with if you start recommending those kind of seasons.
So you have no opinion at all about whether we should shut units down to draws or whether we should use some other kind of technology to offset that, the fact that the fishing game could shut down our seasons for our children. And that's what's going to happen to all of you in the future if you don't understand.
Guaranteed.
Right now. Gonna happen.
Guaranteed.
That's a second recommendation, though, separate from the.
Right.
We
Yes.
are
change the
all,
technology.
Exactly.
we're all back together now. So let's get a recommendation, hear what happened in the archery optics discussion.
Short and sweet. We just recommend that they keep the current regulations.
Okay. Anything you want to elaborate on, or does that any other group, anybody that was not in that group have questions?
What is the current rule?
Current rule is no magnifying sights and no electronics, and we feel like that's really where it should stay. So,
Yep, as the rule says verbatim, it's no electronic devices incorporated to and or attached to the bow and or arrow, with the exception of a lighted knock on your arrow. And the magnifying rule is under the archery only ruling as opposed to just the archery equipment ruling. But we spoke about it, about the only thing that doesn't there's nothing there that doesn't fall under that, considering what we'd consider modern optics. Pin sights have been around forever, single pin, multi-pin, right? They can't be lighted. That's part of the rules with the electronics attached to or incorporated to. So we feel the ruling is pretty well inclusive as it is. No need to kick a dead horse, so to speak.
Okay. How about the modern muzzleloader technology group?
Nathan had his hand up.
Oh, yeah, Nathan had his hand
Oh,
up.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I didn't know
Go
if we're
ahead.
allowed to ask questions on that because it says no electronic devices, but did you guys talk about people attaching cameras to film their own hunt?
We did.
Yes,
We did talk about that.
that did come up, and unfortunately, they're keeping it nice, plain and simple with no electronic devices. I think that's how we left it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Modern muzzleloader technology?
Yeah, so we kind of have two recommendations. One we didn't completely button up, but it was relatively small discussion. Our initial recommendation is that for the muzzleloader season, that the current regulations remain the same. For the short range seasons, we are proposing that the muzzleloader component of the short range restrictions be consistent with the muzzleloader only hunt regulations. So it's a minor difference, or it seems relatively minor, but we're proposing this for the short range seasons for a couple reasons. One, a lot of the short range seasons are short range because of safety, whether they're typically in a largely populated or near a largely populated area, a lot of river bottoms in eastern Idaho or in central Idaho. Two, the advancements in muzzleloader technology, when the sky is the limit, effectively turns muzzleloaders into a single shot long range rifle. With the new powders, the new bullets out there. So to stay with kind of the intent of the short range component of short range seasons, that is kind of the justification in the second proposal we have. The only thing we didn't necessarily come to consensus on or get to the bottom of is whether having a 1X rifle scope would be permitted, because for all the other weapons within the short range season, you're allowed to have a rifle scope, or whether to keep it simplistic and just say the muzzleloader restrictions are the same muzzleloader restrictions between short range and muzzleloader only hunts. Yeah, Ken.
Ken, yeah.
So, and just to add to that, it's like we all recognize the problem in the short range because of what Bryce was explaining. These modern rifles, muzzleloaders are a rifle. They aren't the same class as our traditional muzzleloader rifles, and so it just kind of dodged the reason for the short range weapons. So I don't know that we were in agreement on how exactly to get there, but we all recognize that there's a problem there, and perhaps maybe defining the objective better will help us maybe gel a better solution or suggestion. But there's definitely something to visit more about there.
Any questions for this group?
I have one on that.
Okay.
Maybe Toby or Ellery, or even Derek can answer that. On the short range seasons, is that put in place for more opportunity for people, or is that put in place to restrict the kill rate in those zones?
I'll take that. Nathan, that's a good question. So I think short range weapon is a little bit of, as the group has sort of succumbed to that, a little bit of smoke and mirrors about short range. Some of the weapons are short range and some of them are not exactly short range, but it's mostly for ex-urban hunts. So somewhere outside of, not too far out of an area or in a place that, we use those around, sort of just outside of urban areas. We've put those into play. We don't have any short range weapon elk hunts that I know of. They're all deer hunts of one fashion or the other. Yeah, I guess we do have short range weapon elk hunts too. Yeah, no, just a couple. But anyways, it is. I think that technology on short range weapons has sort of grown way beyond what the commission thought short range weapons were at the time. And, obviously that's maybe not for this group, but it is something that, needs to be considered for the future, because as Ken said, modern muzzleloaders are single shot long range rifles. And so are shotguns with slugs that are bolt action. I mean, Remington used to make a Model 700 20 gauge bolt action shotgun that was very accurate to longer ranges. So yeah, it's I don't like the term short range weapon hunt anymore, because it's sort of a misnomer.
We need to move into the third category here. We're running out of time. So onto the long range hunting group.
A lot of discussion, obviously back and forth on this. I think a recommendation is that we keep the same rules that we currently have in regard to what is a legal rifle in Idaho, and not propose any changes to the weapons themselves.
Maybe we didn't have to.
I'm going to jump in there and say this group needs to rethink this a little bit and really consider making a recommendation to support shorter range seasons in management settings like under objective units. And I'm going to tell you why. And no one's going to like me after this, but this is a problem with a consensus that everyone has to get on this. If I can't get people to get on board with this type of idea, I'm not going to vote for anything. I'm talking 0 yes votes on anything. So everybody needs to look at this so we can stop these terrible draws that are going to shut down these units for the future for our children. We need to rethink it, need to look at it with an open mind, or you're going to come away with this with no consensus on anything.
Yeah.
I would agree that it's a touchy subject, but I would look at long range shooting. I mean, unfortunately, the cat's out of the bag, man. There's how, like I've always said, just because you can doesn't mean that you should. But how would you go about restricting quote unquote long range shooting? Like honestly, there's that is a subject. There everything else out there we can put a stop point on. There's something that we can address to do that. And trying to do that with long range hunting, which I don't we're all hunters. You can kill your animal how you want to kill your animal. You're a great shot, but a bad hunter like I am. But long range shooting, I think the cat's out of the bag. There's nothing much I believe that we can do to slow that down or stop that in any way, shape, or form, unfortunately. There's very few low power scopes that are out there on the shelves today. There's very few rifles that have open sights on the shelf today. Unfortunately, that's going to come down to an ethical, just please think about what you're doing as opposed to just going out there and flinging lead at animals at distance.
Agreed.
So one more comment from Bryce, and then we're going to move on.
Yeah, I would propose, I have a similar train of thought as Dustin, but I would propose a recommendation we make to the commission about this topic is that we would strongly suggest them consider providing more short range opportunities, potentially at the reduction of general rifle or any weapon seasons to strike that balance. And that we can't or won't be able to tell them put more tags here, take more tags away here. But I think it would be prudent of us for a middle ground to come up with a statement saying that this is something we talked about and this is something the commission should consider as a middle ground moving forward with long range shooting.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Alan, do you
And
have
if it
something
doesn't pass,
fast?
if it doesn't pass, it doesn't pass. Write it up. And if it doesn't make it, it doesn't make it.
Agree.
Hallie, do you have something brief?
Yeah, just real quick, I was gonna say, I think, I mean, I could get behind just a general recommendation that emphasizes that we would like to see opportunity preserved, and if that means that we need to add restrictions in, certain areas, not on a statewide basis, but in areas that warrant it, we support that. I could get behind something like that.
Thank you. Okay, everyone, we're going to move into the final round for today. Education is going to be tackled by Jason C., Ken, Larry, Kim, Jeremiah, Alex, Bryce, Tal, and Jeff S. The suggestion that Idaho Fish and Game Commission use the same principles as used by the working group going forward. Jeff C., Hallie, Jason T., Dustin, and Kevin. And then this idea of revisiting all the draft recommendations with an eye for making sure that you're being consistent about the dates that you're suggesting. You don't have to agree with that, but just consider it. That's Derek, Matt, Tim, Nathan, Dylan H., Doug T., and Rob T. So we need to be back here by 8:40 to get a report from all of you. Please stick with us all the way till 9 because I want to tell you about what we're going to do at the next meeting and redefine for your consideration consensus. So with that, you're going to be shipped off to your new breakouts.
Yep, and then just so everyone knows, the education group is going to stay in the main room, and then that means the principals group and the consistent date groups are going to go into breakout rooms. And again, just as a reminder, please designate a note taker before y'all get too far in your conversations. So here you go.
All right, so it looks like everybody's here. Does anybody have any like front of mind, anything burning they want to start with?
I'll start that. I do think updated education and starting with hunter safety is important. And I think we should add information on pretty much every topic that we've discussed through this HAT working group in that education to make so hunters make sound decisions.
No, I see this as maybe an opportunity to do like educating the non-hunting public, right? Like public outreach, hunter advocacy kind of stuff maybe could be something that we could also consider recommending, uh whether it's the social media or what those called public service announcements or those types of things. Because what was the statistic somewhere in one of our meetings? 85% of the public doesn't hunt or something to that effect. 80%. Oh, no, that's a different thing. So maybe in order for us to allow for the tradition of hunting to continue, which we've talked about in our discussions, maybe there's that public outreach component could be beneficial, just so that folks don't think that we're just bloodthirsty Neanderthals.
Real quick here, guys. Who's taking notes?
Yeah, I was gonna ask that too.
Bryce, you on board? Or are you taking too many notes tonight?
I'll triple down.
Thank you, man.
Randy, buckle up. Here to get a bunch of chicken scratches. Here we go.
Well, I think along with the hunter safety updated, the education for ethics and fair chase and all of that with a lot of the subjects we've been discussing, I also think maybe recommending some kind of a media campaign, kind of like what we heard about Arizona did. Because especially when they were putting no cameras around the watering holes and stuff. I think that's really needed. Something that catches people's attention and makes it interesting and goes along with some of the things we're trying to accomplish here.
I 100% agree.
Yeah, I
we
do
need
as well.
We need to spend more time educating everybody, and that's why a lot of these states, if you read about Washington, what's going on with they're trying to do away with the commission, because I think if you're not transparent, we're going to get some problems, and I think that can also help educate us as well on what they think, and so and I can't remember who it was. One of the first speakers out of Arizona that said that their platform that they use to educate the public, because there's a lot smaller percentage of people in Arizona that actually hunt, but it really helped, there's very conducive to the sport. So I would like to see some more involvement in teaching the public about management, harvest, all that stuff, tools we use. I think it could help guide us.
I agree, and I think it could be multi-prong. I think the education through Hunter's Ed is a great start. The more you put that information in a kid's brain, the quicker it's going to gel, and then they bring dad along too down the road. But I think too we need to look big picture and actually work on some marketing schemes. And there's some really good models out there. Beef, the checkoff, that huge success for the beef industry.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of examples like that. I think that, and I think this shouldn't just sit on fishing game. We ought to be looking at an engagement of these different conservation groups, Mule Deer, Elk Foundation, backcountry hunters and anglers, all these folks that have a huge public face all be partnering on this and looking for a way to market these messages of ethics and our story as a hunting community.
Well
I
said,
agree.
Gary.
And I think
I agree.
the Arizona model kind of inspired me earlier on, and that's
Yeah.
every recommendation I've thrown that out there is that needs to be one of our recommendations.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, it would blend nicely with what we're doing to talk about the technologies as well, with that, the benefits, the misconceptions, and the pitfalls of technologies and what those can bring. But just having that whole mix of things going into teaching fair chase and ethics to not only the hunters, but to the observing non-hunting public. It's huge.
I love it. Love it.
I like that too, because I mean, as sportsmen, you know, we protect the environment, we protect the game. All of our money, whether it's we put into it or not, is going into it and to protect it for future generations. So I like the marketing.
Quick question, guys. Right now, are all the classes in person, or can you take them online and you don't have to be in the class? What's the situation right now?
I'll take that one, Larry. No, it's online. It is in person. It is a hybrid of Zoom meetings and in person. There are lots of different options for hunter's education.
Gotcha.
I
think
personally
it might be helpful if there are some. I mean, if you know, in each online class, is there time that you have to spend with an instructor, like a day at the end or two, or because I do think those fellows that you know are putting their time into instructing are really great people who have a good feel for ethics, and there's nothing like a little bit of in-person teaching that the kid it's worth a mint to these children. So you know, I just wasn't aware if courses could be taking 100% online, or if they need to spend a day or two with you know their peers. What's the situation there?
There is a 100% online course, but if you do the hybrid courses, they require that you are there for in person for a field day. Unfortunately, there's a lot lost in the online course.
Yeah, I would agree, Alex, because Hallie was in one of my groups and her daughter just took the online course straight online, and they don't talk anything about ethics or anything like that. So she said it was not, you know, it's just real basic and not getting into a lot of the things we've talked about. So I think what you're saying, making it a combo, a hybrid course, whatever, there's got to be something more added there. So
agreed.
Yeah, well, we try really, really, really hard to get as many in-person classes out there as we can, but
I'll bet, yeah.
I've said it several times throughout this whole working group. There's a shortage of instructors, and not
Alex.
all of them are.
So Alex, you talked about that a lot. So when you're in person in there, are you guys talking about fair chase? Are you just doing field days? What are you? I mean,
Absolutely,
fill us in on
fair chase. We're talking about fair chase. We're talking about conservation. We're talking about ethics.
Great.
We cover all. Any good instructor is going to be covering that stuff. That's usually why most of us get into it, is because we're sick of seeing unethical hunters, people who don't understand conservation or fair chase.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to level set something for folks here real quick on Hunter Ed. Absolutely, obviously, big proponent of it. But just to set expectations, there's stuff that we have to teach in order to be in line with international hunter education standards. There's also a time constraint that we want to make sure we don't go too far, too long, that people don't do it, don't participate. There's a sweet spot in there. So we have a limited amount of time with these folks. And the average age of the individual taking hunter's ed is like 9 to 11, 9 to 12. So we also need to make sure that we're teaching things at a level that is understandable by the majority of the individuals taking hunter ed. Now, obviously, parents participate, they learn stuff from it. Like, there's a whole range of folks that participate, a whole wide age range, but the majority of folks that we are teaching in hunter ed are ages 9 to 11. So absolutely make sure, like, I'm not trying to deter you. I'm just trying to make sure that you have level set expectations of like, this is not a college level course. This is not going to be like a deep dive situation. This is trying to set a baseline for folks to be able to go and be successful. But just want to make sure that you have the proper expectations of the realities of Hunter's Ed. And Alex, please correct me if I'm incorrect in any of that.
No, Ellery, you're 100% correct. I mean, the course requirements are 10 hours, and there's a lot of course material to cover in that time period. And I schedule my courses are typically more like 12 to 15 hours because I like to fit more in, but not everybody is willing to do that long of a class. Ellery's right. So
that's something. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
Is that something maybe we should look at? Is so you got the beginner hunter's education course for your 10 to 12-year-olds or whatever in that area, and can we make something for advanced hunter's education where their people are more mature, they've had a few years to hunt, their attention span's a little bit more obtainable, right? Can we do an advanced hunter's education?
Already happening. There are skills courses that they're doing now where you can learn more intermediate skills, learn shooting, learn marksmanship. There's classes for cooking, preparing game, field dressing. They're just additional courses on top of hunter's education.
And where is that public at? Where is that posted? Is that being advertised?
With hunter's education. So if you go to the fishing game website, sorry, what was that, Jeremiah? You cut out.
I've never heard of it, and I've hunted in Idaho my entire life.
Well, you're not getting enough inspiration for fishing game. Then get the emails, get on their Facebook if you would, do.
Well, and that's where it goes back to what we were talking about, the marketing, and advertisement. I could probably ask half of my hunters around here in my local area, and they'll never know that there's an advanced hunter's education.
Oh yeah,
I think that speaks to the need for marketing, right? So I think, getting the messaging out is probably our worst failure in this. And so I think that's where we look at these different multi-pronged marketing schemes. They're age appropriate and content appropriate for the hunter's ed and their requirements. And then we look at these different facets of how we reach public, because nobody has attention to span to take a college course on this, right? It's going to have to be short and sweet and really be a pointed message for people to pick it up.
So I've got a couple quick thoughts. First off, getting the right message to the right people to make a difference is super challenging, right? So having a follow-up education course or a voluntary course you go and like learn other skills, great, but that's not going to fix the person who's not hunting or doing something shady. They're not hunting ethical, right? It's like the person who wants to do the right thing is going to go to that. So the same thing with, I think, what Ellery is getting at a bit, where hunter's education largely is for targeted a lot younger folks who in their heads, like how they learn what's ethical or not is not going to be necessarily immediately picked up during a hunter's education course, right? That's like a generation. That's a family unit thing of what's ethical or not ethical. So there are a lot of these little things that I think could be useful. In my opinion, I think the most useful is kind of like the Arizona model of having a social media blitz where it's for folks who aren't in the middle of it. I don't think we're going to change the minds of someone who's blatantly unethically hunting or doing whatever they're doing in the field, but getting the perception out for the larger non-hunting community in Idahoans or the nation, where it's like, we care about this, we're discussing it, everyone's super passionate about it. Having social media outlets or posts, even if it's something doesn't have a ton of substance, but like the Close the Gap campaign, like super effective, super small, but it also like hits home of we care and we want to do things right and respect the animal. And this is kind of like probably what I would imagine the best bang for the buck. And the other thing, which I think is a great example there, is mentioned, like talking about fish and wildlife management. they're like the Fish and Game, they're already doing the Hook and Bulletin podcast, doing a lot more social media. That information's out there. It takes a ton of time and effort. And like for an agency that's already strapped to just collect all the data needed to go out and like come up with good management or regulations or whatever the season setting is, having the social media or the time for biologists to talk through all the wildlife components, Fish and Game is putting the time in to do that. So I really think like focusing on the ethical component as far as a, hey, we're here, we care about this, is probably the best bang for the buck as far as outreach that we could do as a Idahoans trying to keep the heritage alive. So I'm not saying all these other things aren't super important. I'm just saying with limited resource and time that I think the most or the best bang for the buck would be social
We got
media.
like 3 minutes remaining.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's all right. That's all good. Should we try to put something together or write up a recommendation?
So I have notes with bullets. I can go over those. So at large, more education and outreach related to ethical hunting. And those bullets under that umbrella, update hunter safety with greater emphasis on ethics and ethical hunting. Social media campaigns about ethical hunting and choices. There's more outreach about wildlife management. Engage with more conservation groups. And then kind of the two other side notes that don't fall perfectly under that larger umbrella. A good example is the Arizona model for public outreach. And then at large, trying to use this information to improve public perception of the hunting community. So that's a whole bunch of bullets. I don't know. I can work to weed these into a recommendation or some write-up after this, but unless someone do folks have thoughts?
Sure, we all have thoughts. My thought on it is if we were to make a recommendation, basically we would just be recommending that the department partner with conservation groups to do a social media blitz. I mean, like if you were to say, okay, we want to talk to BHA, RMEF, Ducks Unlimited, and get a few of these big power hitter conservation groups together and say, we need your help with this. Because there's guys in BHA that can do videos way above and beyond what Fish and Game probably has even budgeted for, their media. I don't think they want to take that on, like you said. They've got a lot of more important things to do than make videos and post them online. So if they could partner with several of these big hitting conservation groups and say, hey, we need to create this perception that hunters are ethical, that we're actually trying, that we're working to improve our image and make the public see that. I think that's about the only, and that's such a loose recommendation. That's almost something that we're sitting right here we're making. It's not a commission decision so much. I think that's more of a policy decision, not a rule-making decision.
And I think at the high level, it's just our recommendation is, public outreach, social media, those kinds of things. We don't have to get into like the nitty-gritty of what, just how, or the things we would like them to do.
Yeah,
And I
Jason,
think
just
this
real
is
quick to that, you can make a general recommendation that the commission is to explore new ways to engage the public in education on fair chase, or you don't have to go down to the
right.
specifics was just said. You could just.
But all of us, all the agencies, I should say, have public affairs specialists that are pretty good at that. I think Gallery fits in there. But I think that's where we leverage that power with partners, like Alex was saying, with backcountry hunters and anglers that have some folks that really specialize in that stuff too. And we leverage that power across a bunch of folks. And we just focus on the general because that's not our specialty. in this group for certain. And let's recommend a bunch of experts get together to do that for us.
I think also my 2 cents to add, everything sounds great. We may not require, but at least recommend and really try to push as many kids to be there, at least for a day or two in person, like the hybrid class. I think that's invaluable to have those days with folks like Alex.
I agree. I think what Bryce put together, we can polish it up later and maybe simplify it a little bit more, but he still caught most of the things we were talking about.
Or we summarize it as, here are some potential suggestions, and then have a list of bullets of what we discussed that were, it's probably more in the weeds than necessary, but yeah.
Well, welcome back. No, I guess we got one more group coming back. Are we all
We're
back?
all back, Wendy.
Okay, we're all back. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Education group was in this room. Would you like to share what you came up with?
Sure. So our general recommendation is the commission consider increasing education and outreach related to fair chase and ethical hunting. And then we have a whole list of examples, but at large, that is the general recommendation. Some of the specific ideas we threw out there would be update hunter safety with greater emphasis on ethics, with potentially more in-person time, social media campaigns about ethical hunting and choices, more outreach on wildlife management. Through this process, engaging with more conservation groups and partners to help spread the message and kind of leverage their resources in helping craft the message and get largely the information out to folks through social media platforms. And then there's kind of 2 side notes. A lot of us like the Arizona model of outreach and education that they've been implementing the last year or 2. So that would be kind of a nice template to build off of. And ultimately, using this as a way to improve public perception of hunting and hunters in Idaho to make sure that we're able to do this for a long time, and so are kids and grandkids. So did I miss anything, team?
I think just the emphasis that part of this is the outreach to the non-hunting public so that they buy into our, or at least accept our way of life and our passions. They don't have to love it, but they can at least accept it, maybe.
At least understand it.
Yep.
Thank you, group. The group that tackled transmitting the principles that you used to develop your recommendations as a means of supporting consideration of continuing to emerge technology in the future.
Yeah, so let me just share. So we talked about we don't necessarily want to tell the commission how to make decisions. I don't think they would take kindly to that. So we decided that we would propose to this group that these principles we've developed be placed sort of as a preface to any other recommendations that we put forward. And then, of course, we would list all those principles and definitions and then have some sort of language like the following. So it just says these guiding principles and definitions were used to evaluate any new recommendation. These principles and definitions were unanimously supported by all members of the HAT working group.
Any questions for this group? I think this point about the preface, I think we do somehow need to tackle how we're packaging what you've come up with. So thank you for broaching that subject. Nathan's got a thumbs up. Okay, last group that looked at dates.
Okay, I have that. Yeah, there's kind of some inconsistency in the dating on, the recommendation for night vision, drones, transmitting trail cameras, and then any thermal imaging optics. And so the one on drones, we're not recommending changing anything how that one is written. The other three we want to make consistent with each other, which is July 1st through December 31st. And so we would make that date change on those three so that they all read the same. And I think, Toby was in with us and just emphasized that we probably need to have a hard date on it if it's going to be enforceable at all. So I think that's where we're at.
Any questions for this group? Okay. Thank you for your hard work tonight. Any big picture thoughts before we move into closing up the meeting and preparing for our final meeting together? Where's your cautious optimism? We still there?
It's getting more
Well,
cautious.
it's past 8 o'clock in Boise, Idaho, so I think some of us are getting a little tired.
Yeah, I understand. Okay. Well, you will recall that the homework assignment asked for reactions to the time. The time of the meeting will be from 10 to 3 on the 22nd. I'm aware of one person that will not be able to participate in person, and we will make arrangements for Zoom, although our preference would be if you have the ability to attend, that you come in person. We're going to have our work cut out for us. So you were tasked by the director to develop consensus on what you could recommend. As a facilitator, heard that he doesn't want to see 75% of people supported this and 25% opposed. He wants to know what you can actually agree to forward as a recommendation, recommendations. As a facilitator, my definition of consensus is everyone understands and will support. It doesn't mean everyone agrees with all of the pieces of the recommendations, but it does mean that you'll agree to not say later, I was a part of that group and the stuff they came up with was garbage. You need to say, I didn't necessarily agree with everything, but that was the best result we could come up with together. And I hope you're hearing the nuances there. So the plan for the meeting is going to be the following. You will have the opportunity to look at each individual recommendation and indicate whether you support it or not. And if you don't support it, what needs to happen to change that recommendation for you to be able to support it. You'll be doing this individually, and then we'll look at the results together as to how many people support it, how many people can't support it, and what they would need to see changed. Then for those recommendations that we understand need consideration, you'll have the opportunity to break in small groups and try to fix the things that have been revealed to you that need to be changed. Then we'll see what package of recommendations everyone can support and try for consensus to support that package. If there's an indication that there are chinks in that things that people can't support, we'll have some discussion and see what's left. This will be a challenging meeting. I believe there's enough agreement on most of what is under consideration that we have a chance of having something that you can agree to move forward with. I'm not going to promise you that it'll be easy. So I want you to come forward in the spirit of working together to see what you can agree on, because that's what you were asked to do by the director. Any concerns about what I've just described? Dylan?
So, just so I'm clear, there is no black and white definition of what consensus is. It's up to your decision as the.
No, it's not up to me, but I have 35 years experience getting groups to consensus. So if you have an alternate definition of consensus that you'd like to bring forward.
Well, it's not my, I guess I'm curious what your guys' definition of consensus is. Was my earlier question.
You're asking your fellow people in the group?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, if it's up to us. I guess that's my question is I don't know who, it sounds like it's up to the group what the consensus is. I'm just confused on consensus. I don't know what it means in this group. Is it 90% consensus or it's up to all of us
90%
at
is
the
not
end?
Consensus.
Yeah,
90%
I
is,
know.
yeah.
So are we talking unanimous? Is that we have to be unanimously agree to what we push forward?
Right. If
So
you
100%.
if you don't unanimously agree, it's not consensus.
Okay, so it has to be 100% of people have to agree.
And
okay.
Correct. We
rather
just
than looking
have
at
to.
that as a restriction, it's what can you agree to say together? That's what you've been asked to come up with. Ken?
Yeah, and if I understand it, it's not, we agree 100% on 100% of every detail. It's, we agree with the concept, we can live with this moving forward and honor the group's charter that we aren't going to try submarining it after everything's done.
Yeah. Yes, but there will be a proposal and 100% of people have to have their hand on the proposal and say, I'm okay with this.
Yeah, I can
That's
live with
correct.
that.
Correct.
Okay.
Another way to look at it is this is the best conglomeration of recommendations that this group can agree to. So there's opportunity for, I don't like this terminology of horse trading, but I'll go along with this if you'll go along with that. There's opportunity for that, but there's not a lot of time for that to happen.
So just a thought here, I worked with Wendy many years on sage grouse and groups. It was very contentious that they came together as enemies, really. And that's not our group. We're all kind of on we're all on the same page. We kind of look at it in different aspects, but essentially we're all looking to try to get the same spot. And where I'm going with this, I would defer heavily to what Wendy recommended us to do as a group to try to find a pathway forward based off of her experience and being able to bring such a diverse and adversarial group as a sage grouse local working group together and have a plan that they were able to implement at the end of the day.
Thank you for that vote of confidence, but I wanted you to really think about what can we agree to? And if it's a point that you can't agree to it, it's out. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Gene.
Well, I'm just gonna say something that I think a lot of people are thinking. I think the thought of everyone agreeing was never gonna happen. I think it was unrealistic, to be completely honest. If everyone had to agree, we would have never split off from England. We'd be wearing furry top hats and drinking tea at 10:30. And there would be a lot of people bucking cotton bales right now who are good people who shouldn't be doing it. So everybody having to agree was always unrealistic. Just my opinion.
I'll chime in there. I mean, our founding fathers found a pathway with the Constitution and the Bill of Rights to agree. And I think every single one of us signed on to a charter specifying we're going to find a pathway here. And there are going to be things that get taken off the table, and I think that's okay. But I don't think that should be a reason to take everything off the table just because we couldn't find one thing to agree on.
And I would also say that we're moving recommendations forward. We may not necessarily agree with them. We have to look at the bigger picture too. This is not the end all. This is honestly the start of a lot bigger conversation with the commission and the general public. So there are opportunities within opportunities.
Agreed.
Okay. So 10 to 3, March 22nd. Come prepared to find what you agree about so that you can produce a recommendation, a set of recommendations that you can all agree with. It's what you can say with one voice is what's on this slide. So that's what we're trying to find. Ken, you have your, is it still up or is it back up?
It's back up.
Okay.
So just when we get done with this on the 22nd, then, and it then gets rolled up to the commission, then are we as a group, or how are we then going to communicate or engage with the commission at that point?
So once so process-wise, so once y'all make your final recommendations and I have those, that will be packaged for the commission and they will review it at the following commission meeting, which is only, I think, like 5 days later, ish. So I will present your recommendations to the commission. They will have time to review it. I will also provide a detailed review of all that went into it, all the time, all the discussions, different points of consideration, the things that didn't make it forward, things that were voted down, and then giving them the final recommendations to review. And our ask of them will be whether or not to direct us to proceed with the rulemaking process. If they instruct us to proceed with the rulemaking process and incorporating the recommendations of the working group, we will do that. And then we have a whole nother public process for the rulemaking. And then that's when the specific rule changes, the red line changes, go out to the general public, and to anyone who wants to comment on them is welcome to do so. So at that point, members of the working group can submit comments. You're more than welcome to come to the commission meeting and talk about your experience. You can participate in that process and encourage others to do so. But I will be presenting what comes of this group to the commission formally at the March commission meeting.
I want to clarify one thing. They don't have to take the package as a whole. They could pick and choose parts for whatever reason, right?
Yes,
they recommendations, right?
It is up to the commission's discretion on how they want to address the recommendations that come forth. If they want to move them all forward, they can do that. If they want to move bits and pieces of them, they can. If they thought that something didn't go far enough, they can recommend something more. Like there's to the point that was made earlier. This is the beginning of a process that's going to be lengthy with more steps for the public to be able to engage. Am I missing anything, Commissioner Atterbury?
Nope, spot on.
Okay, any final thoughts or questions? We'll see you all on the 22nd. Thanks for all your hard work tonight.
Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a good night, everybody.
Have a good night.